In this lesson, we're going to look at IELTS reading multiple choice questions. Okay, so let's learn how to answer this type. All right, now multiple choice questions are probably very familiar to you already, right? Maybe almost every test you've ever taken has had some multiple choice questions. Okay, IELTS multiple choice look a lot like what you would expect for a multiple choice question, but there are some unique parts about them. All right, there are three kinds of multiple choice questions that you might face on the IELTS reading section. All three types begin with either a question, okay, so there's a question prompt, or the prompt will be an incomplete sentence that you need to finish. And then the three types look like this. There will either be, in the first type, 4 answer choices in which you have to choose one correct answer, or you might have 5 answer choices. If that's the case, there could be 2 correct answers. And the last one, if there are 6 answer choices, there will be 3 correct answers that you need to find among them. Okay, so otherwise, a pretty standard question type, except you can expect to possibly find these different numbers of answer choices and correct answers. Now they look something like this for IELTS questions. You're going to have a incomplete sentence in this case. Okay, by 1954, big cities' economy had shifted from agriculture to, and then very often there is one word or a phrase or even a longer part of a sentence that you need to use to complete, to find the best answer to finish the sentence or answer the question. Now, if you have to answer more, if there are more than one answer and you have, let's say, 5 answer choices to choose among, then your question will look something like this. It might read, what 2 industries were well developed in big city by 1960? Okay, now if you've got 6 answer choices and 3 correct answers that you need to find, you could just replace the number 2 with number 3, and that's what it would look like if you add another answer choice there. All right, but this is just to get familiar. These are what the IELTS multiple choice questions look like. How to approach them. Okay, there are a couple of things to keep in mind for your multiple choice questions on the IELTS. First of all, and this is a very important tip, keep in mind, remember that answers are going to be presented. They're going to come in order in the text for this question type. That's not true for most types of IELTS questions, but for multiple choice, it is. That means if let's say you find the answer to number 5 of, maybe you have 8 multiple choice questions and you quickly find the answer for number 5. You know that the answers for numbers 1 through 4 are going to come before that answer that you found in the text for number 5, and that numbers 6, 7, and 8 are going to be presented after that answer that you found for number 5 in the text. Okay, so this is a wonderful clue to help you scan for answers. If you find an answer or 2 or 3 that you feel really confident about, then you can use those correct answers that you feel confident about to help you search for the other answers that might be more difficult for you to find. A very helpful tip for multiple choice questions on IELTS reading. Okay, secondly then, begin your scanning by using keywords from the question itself. Okay, so not the answer choices, but the question. This is helpful because usually the main idea or the main topic of your of the question is going to be found in that part. Okay, so again, use the question or the incomplete sentence to begin your scanning. Now, there are some exceptions to this, and in fact, one of our sample questions that we will look at later in this lesson is a good example of, well, sometimes the question doesn't give you enough information, so then you have to use answer choices to help you scan, okay? In any case, even if you can find where to look for the answer in the text from the question, okay, before looking at the answer choices, eventually, before you decide on your final answer for a question, do make sure that you read all the answer choices. Each one will be somewhat tempting in some way. It will relate in some way to something that's said in the text, okay? So it's important to look at them all. Many students find that actually their eye or their interest goes towards one particular answer to answer a question, and as they think about it more and they search more for the answer in the text, maybe they find the place where they think the answer's from and they do some more careful reading, they find that a different answer choice is actually better or fully supported by what's said in the text, okay? So anyway, you don't want to spend a crazy amount of time, not really too long on one particular question, but at a minimum, you should make sure to at least read each answer choice to make sure that you're not missing something or not thinking about something that may actually be a better answer supported by the text. Okay, finally, and this is true, of course, of all reading questions on the IELTS, expect the correct answer, and really most of the answer choices are going to involve paraphrasing, all right? So they almost never use direct language from the text, especially with correct answers. They want to test your vocabulary by seeing if you can catch paraphrases of the key words and phrases. All right, so let's take a look at some examples. Now, this question here, we were going to look at two example multiple choice questions. This one relates to the article that you see pasted below in the comment section, in the notes section down below this video. All right, so if you'd like to, I recommend in just a minute, pause the video, try to answer the question, and then we'll come back and discuss how to approach it and what the correct answers are. All right, so go ahead and attempt this question and pause your video now. All right, so how did you do? Well, this question, as I warned you earlier in the lesson, if you wanted to scan for the answer, you certainly could not simply use just this part of the question, okay, the incomplete sentence to help you scan. The entire passage is about young adult literature. So this is an example of a question that simply does not give you enough information to go search for the answer in the text. You have to use the answer choices here to see what might work. Now, there are some clues, right? As you're looking through answer choices A, B, C, all right, we see that, first of all, there's a discussion of a war. And if you looked in section A, okay, part A of the text, there is a discussion of World War II right at the beginning of the text. There's also a discussion of children's literature. All right, this topic is another thing that is mentioned early on in paragraph A. So we've got some clues here about where to start looking because it's this discussion of war, of children's literature. Okay, answer choice C also discusses children's literature. Okay, so if I am scanning for answers, I think paragraph A is the place I would begin my search, trying to find a correct answer for these answer choices you see here. All right, now hopefully you found that answer choice B is the answer that is best supported by what we see in the text, okay? The answer comes from this part of paragraph A that you see down below. It reads, in contrast to children's literature, which reaffirms the child's place in the world, young adult literature helps adolescents make sense of their world, discover they are not alone, and find their place in society. Okay, now, this part of paragraph A expresses the idea that children's literature and young adult literature are distinct. They are separate. They are not the same thing. All right, now this is a concept, it says, that developed as people started to recognize that young adulthood, this teenage period that the article mentions is from ages 12 to 19, That was after World War II, something that people started seeing as sort of a separate category. These people are not children anymore. They're considered young adults or teenagers. All right, and young adult literature came along at the same time as people started to make that discovery. All right. Anyway, the idea that children's literature and young adult literature are different is what's supported for answer choice B. Now, the other ones. A, developed as a response to war. No, A can't be correct. So this whole phenomenon of people recognizing teenagers as a new sort of category, that occurred at about the same time as World War II and the end of World War II there. So that was something that occurred simultaneously, but young adult literature was not a response to the war. Okay, it wasn't something that was inspired by or connected to in some way the war. It was simply mentioning that it came about the same time. All right, so the word here, response, that it was a response to war, is something that is not supported in the text. Okay, answer choice C, was inspired by children's literature. No, this doesn't work either. To be inspired by children's literature, that would mean that young adult authors looked at children's literature and they found something in it that they wanted to sort of copy or relate to young adults. This text, the article does not mention that young adult authors were inspired by children's literature. No, actually, kind of the opposite. They were looking out and recognizing teenagers and young adults as a separate category of people, not really children, not really adults, right? And they wanted to provide literature for that group. So it really wasn't inspired by children's literature at all. And D, offers teenagers a glimpse into adult life. Okay, this also doesn't work. All right, the topics and themes of young adult literature are not about adult things. They're about teenage and young adult things. Okay, and themes, ideas, interests. Okay, so no, it doesn't give teenagers a glimpse into adult life. It is a category of books that is about teenagers and things that they are experiencing in their own lives. And so that answer choice does not work. Okay, let's try another one now, a different question. This one, I think you could use, you could definitely use the question, the incomplete question up above for your scanning, right? There's a key word there to help you, and that is earliest forms, the earliest forms of young adult literature. Okay, now, we also know that the answer to this question is going to come after the answer we found for question number 11, right? So in the text, the answer that supports the correct answer for number 12 will be presented after the information that gave us the answer for question 11. All right, use that information now and pause your video. Go try to answer this question about the earliest forms of young adult literature. All right, pause your video now. Okay, so hopefully you were able to find the answer after that section, in that part in section A that gave us the answer for number 11. The earliest forms, well, that was an idea that was discussed in paragraph B, where they discussed the first works of young adult literature, the sort of earliest author there. And the correct answer for this one is answer choice C. Highlighted typical experiences of adolescence. That's a concept we found in paragraph B, where it says the part in green down below. It says the particular work spawned similar novels focusing on the day-to-day concerns. Okay, that means sort of the regular sort of interests and concerns of young people, of teenagers, okay? So that idea is a really good paraphrase of the concept from question C, where it discusses that it highlighted typical experiences of adolescence. All right, that is supported in the text in paragraph B. Let's look at the wrong ones. Answer choice A, offered teenagers a way to escape from their daily concerns. Well, no, not really. It wasn't an escape. It was a way to think about and to see other young adults doing the kinds of things that they might be interested in as well, okay? And also to kind of consider, all right, what are the social norms? There's a whole discussion of social norms and what was acceptable behavior. And it said that these books in some ways supported the common idea of what good behavior would be. And it also said it pushes against that as well in that paragraph. All right, but it is rather than being a way to escape their daily concerns, this is a way to kind of think about their daily life and reflect upon their daily life in some way. So it was not an escape. And a good example of an escape might be maybe a book of fantasy, okay? So an imaginary land or something like that that's described in a fantasy novel. That could be a kind of escape, taking a reader to another world or another place. These books were opposite. They were presenting the daily life of young people, and so A doesn't really work according to what we read there in the text. Okay, answer choice B, appealed to a rebellious audience. Well, it does say at the end of paragraph B that teenagers were looking to distance themselves from their parents and adults in their lives. But distancing oneself is very different from being rebellious, okay, to rebelling against. Rebelling means fighting against someone, okay, so pushing back against rules, right? That's the kind of idea that one might think about when they think of a teenager rebelling against their parents. Distancing oneself is just simply trying to think about how you are unique from the adults in their lives, right? And the article in passage B there at the end talks about music and clothing and other things represented in these novels that would help teenagers consider themselves to be distinct from the adults in their lives. Okay, so the key to this answer choice being wrong is the idea that rebellion or being rebellious against adults is not something that is mentioned as a part of these young adult novels here, these earliest young adult novels. Being distinct or different, yes, but rebelling, no, that's too strong. Okay, and answer choice D, that the earliest forms of young adult literature portrayed social norms of the day inaccurately. Well, it does say that in some ways the books supported the social norms of the day, and in other ways it sort of went against them, but it does not ever say that the social norms were presented in the wrong way or in some way that was inaccurate. Incorrect, right, according to what they were at that time. That idea is not supported and not mentioned in that passage, okay? So D doesn't work as well. The best answer choice for this one is C, because it's supported there in the middle of paragraph B. Okay, so those were two examples of multiple choice questions that you might encounter on the IELTS reading section. Just a few things to remember from this lesson. There are 3 types. You can expect 3 different types of multiple choice questions, each type with a different number of answer choices, anywhere from 4 to 6, and a different number of correct answers, anywhere from 1 to 3. The question and the directions will tell you how many answers to select for each type, but it always goes with the number of answer choices available. Okay, so if there are 4 answer choices, it will always be 1 correct answer, for example. All right. Secondly, remember that answers will always be presented in order in the text. Okay, so this helps you to scan. If you're confident about an answer for one of the questions, you know that the answers for multiple choice questions that come before that particular question will be presented earlier in the text. And the questions that come later, after the answer choice you feel really confident about, will come later in the text. All right, so that helps you to scan, to figure out where to look for answers in the passage. The best strategy is to begin looking for keywords and to begin your scanning by looking at the question or the incomplete sentence in the prompt. And if that doesn't work, if there's not enough information there, you should use the answer choices for your scanning. Okay, but no matter what, even if you feel pretty confident that you found the best answer very quickly, make sure you, at a minimum, you read each of the answer choices, okay? Because each one will be tempting, and often they are somewhat tricky, okay? So just do yourself a favor and take the time to read each one, and don't skip any answer choices before moving on to the next question. Just consider all the possibilities first. All right, and the last thing there, look for paraphrases, right? Like with all of our reading question types, the correct answer will almost never take language directly from the text. You're going to have to find synonyms, look for keywords as you scan, and try to figure out what ideas the questions present that are expressing the same idea as something in the passage, just with different language. Okay, so that's the key, not only with this question type, but almost every one we have an IELTS reading. Okay, but in this case, this is the multiple choice questions. Hopefully this gives you a good sense of how to approach this question type when you encounter them on the exam.